Hey guys, so let's pick this up here where we left off. We were talking before about how early American unions were regarded with a lot of suspicion, and many people thought that they were part of a vast Illuminati like conspiracy to overthrow the government. And this was largely due to the fact that unions in Europe were Marxist and that American owners and industry leaders sort of fed into the fear that people had that unions were actually here to sort of overthrow the country and sort of drag us down some kind of rabbit hole into weird political extremism, which the unions themselves did not help because they were rather secretive about stuff. Even though they had to legally do everything, they were really hush hushed about what went on and what they were about, and it really gave the impression that they were part of secret societies. In post war America, I don't know, would it be post-bellum, like after the war America? You have the first big nationwide union emerge, the National Labor Union, which was around for the better part of 7 years. They were a union that was open to anybody, whether you had a skilled job or an unskilled job. So here, let's take a moment to dissect these two terms real quick because it's kind of an important differentiation here. Okay, so this first one here, okay, the skilled workers. Skilled workers are those workers who have to have specific job training. They have technical skills, carpenters, bricklayers, masons, um, like automotive workers or mechanics. These people are highly trained professionals. They are generally well paid or better paid, and their jobs, while they can be risky, don't necessarily have the same level of risk entailment that unskilled workers do. Unskilled workers are those people whose jobs require minimal or no technical training. Um, Miners, factory line workers, ditch diggers. These are people who they don't have to have a lot of skill in what they do. If any skills are necessary, they're minimal at best. They are realistically, oops, they are realistically just they're guys who can be plugged in and are very replaceable because they don't have a specific skill set that requires a specific type of background. They were open to any white men, skilled or unskilled. So they didn't allow blacks or other non-whites, nor did they allow women. What ends up killing the National Labor Union is their decision to become much more political. They started like advocating more straight out for political stuff. So it wasn't, hey, let's go on strike to get, um, you know, better pay. It's let's go on strike because we're not a socialist country, or let's go on strike to protest capitalism. That didn't sit well with people, and they fell apart. Now, there is one thing that the National Labor Union did achieve, and I bring it up because as an outcome, this is something kind of important to understand. The National Labor Union got the 8-hour workday for government employees. Now, I would argue if there's any group of employees who didn't need less working hours, it's the government, but that's just me. I digress. The significance of the 8-hour workday is it is a commonality among every single union in America, no matter what else that they stood for, no matter if they were politically radical, if they were politically more or less conservative or moderate, if they were skilled, if they were unskilled, if they were open to everybody or open to only a very limited group of people. All of them wanted the 8-hour workday. It was a common thing amongst all the unions. So keep that in mind that when we go through, this is going to be a question that I will probably ask about unions. So just understand that that's going to be something that comes up. Now, with the decision to become all political and such, the National Labor Union falls apart and it is replaced instead by the Knights of Labor. Now, I'm just going to offer this up here as an observation, okay? If I'm like a PR guy or an advertiser, and I'm hired by a union, and the union's like, look, We don't want people to think we're part of a secret society. We don't want people to think that we're out to overthrow the government. We don't want people to think we're part of a vast conspiracy against humanity, that we're all into strange, magical, weird hoodoo and stuff. Can you do a logo for us? This is not what I would come up with. I mean, this thing screams, look at me, I'm a member of a weird cult. You got a pentagram, the upside down weird Baphomet star. You have a circle with a bizarre phrase, that is the most perfect government in which an injury to one is the concern of all. You have this weird hexagon inside the circle. Inside the hexagon is another circle with a pentagon, part of the pentagram. And inside the pentagon is the globe with a bizarre triangle on it. And the triangle is connecting North and South America and Australia, of all places. And the triangle, actually, if you look at how it falls on here, kind of looks like the Illuminati symbol. And it has this bizarre thing that says Fraterneum, North America, something. What is it? Whoop, I'm going to go back here. Wow, this thing popped back on me. Sorry. See if I can get it to get bigger. I can't. I have no idea what this is. And then it's got this bizarre AK the Ninth. Dude, this just screams, look at me, I'm a member of a cult. But in any case, it's funny because you could not have found a more like non-cultish group than the Knights of Labor. The Knights of Labor were organized in 1869. And they also were a national union. By the 1880s, they had over 800,000 members, which is a really significant number given the time period we're talking about. The Knights of Labor is very different because, unlike the other unions, they are actually chartered through a church. The Knights of Labor are chartered through the American Catholic Church. And because they are part of or chartered through the Catholic Church, there's certain things about them that are very different than other unions. The first thing is the Catholic Church explicitly rejects Marxism in any way, shape, or form. So, in order to be approved, and in order to be chartered, and in order to not receive like a punishment for the members who are Catholics, the union had to officially reject Marxism. So here is essentially like the 8 things that the union stood for or wanted. Number 1, first and foremost, the primary belief that the best way to help workers was by educating them and developing them as people, giving them culture and refinement, because education led to better job opportunity, led to entrepreneurialism, led to an understanding of rights and responsibilities. The best way to help was to educate. So for their own members, they sponsored education, like how to read and write, to actually have like book learning groups, this kind of stuff. Second, the absolute utter rejection of Marxism and anarchism. Third, republicanism. This does not mean that they are Republicans. What it means is that the union is actually set up like the United States government. The local chapters of the union elect representatives who go to the Union Congress, which I think was in Baltimore, and they voted on matters there as representatives for their particular branch. They wanted the 8-hour workday. They wanted better working conditions. They wanted an end to both child and prison labor. One of the common practices at the time was prison managers, wardens, would actually rent out prisoners to serve as work crews on various and sundry jobs. And they could easily undercut whatever charge or whatever pay the local workers were getting, because being prisoners, they actually didn't receive any of the money. It went right to the warden as like his payment for providing the labor. So even if they were working at half of what normal labor costs were, the warden was making bank and he didn't care. It's really hard to compete fairly and on a level playing field when you're competing against people who are actually slaves, essentially. Not that prisoners should be in prison, most likely. That's not what I'm saying. But the way that they were used was essentially slave labor. Next, the support of cooperatives. So this is an extra credit activity that I put on the Google Classroom for you guys. A cooperative is a business that is owned by its employees. And the Knights of Labor were big believers in this concept that if employees owned the companies, they would have a greater chance of succeeding and everybody would be happy. And you can really see this. The employee owned companies that you will go to around the state, and for extra credit, you can bring me in a list of cooperatives in the United States, and specifically or particularly in Wisconsin, but across the US, up to 50 of them. And it's for every 10 of them that you get a list of, I'll give you 1 point of extra credit. You can bring me a list of these. I think you'll be fascinated to see what companies that are around here that you probably visit on a regular basis that are actually employee owned cooperatives. Cooperatives tend to produce better outcomes, higher customer satisfaction, higher job satisfaction among employees, and they are more open to being peaceful because the employees have an understanding of what it is that the ownership and the managers go through because they are the owners and the managers. Last but not least, the Knights of Labor supported the idea of the adoption of an income tax. The belief that wealthier people should pay a portion of their income to support everybody else or to support the government. The income tax is really controversial, and when we get to the income tax in Unit 4, we'll sort of talk about why it is that income tax, especially when it was first created, is really just a form of wealth redistribution. And it was intended, it is a very socialist idea, especially how it was enacted in the United States. Um, One of the things that makes the Knights of Labor very different is that part of their charter required them to be open to everybody. They were open to all races, both men and women, and even open to all religious groups. You did not have to be Catholic to be a member of the Knights of Labor. The other thing that's really interesting here is the Knights of Labor was open to producers. And I'm going to just show this right here the word producers. What's meant by producer? I'm not talking about the people who like oversee Hollywood film productions. Producers are essentially people who are their own boss and they make a product of some kind or other. They produce a service. So an example of this would be farmers. Farmers aren't like working for other people. They're producing food. But without those farmers, people would go and starve. So the idea was is that if you are essentially your own employee, you should have the right to be in a union because unions are for employees. Okay. Um, the real success that the Knights of Labor encountered is in a series of railroad strikes. Now remember, a strike is just a work stoppage. It's the workers refuse to do their jobs until they get what they're after. Um, in particular, there were a series of strikes against the Wabash Railroad. And these were very successful, actually. And they were also very peaceful. And they achieved getting better benefits, better working conditions, better pay for the members of the Knights of Labor. The Knights of Labor was, in fact, so successful that it became the target of a conspiracy. Socialists and anarchists infiltrated the Knights of Labor, and through the media, as well as through control of different aspects of the Union, they sort of pinned a lot of violent issues and strikes on the Knights of Labor who were blamed for the problems and the violence that was going on with labor at the time. So when we pick this up tomorrow, we're going to talk about in the next lesson, we'll talk about the last major union we're going to discuss, and that is the sort of like outgrowth. When the Knights of Labor fall apart, more or less, there's one union left standing, and that's who we're going to talk about tomorrow, one big union. So we're going to be reading a selection called What the Working Man Wants by Samuel Gompers, which is connected with the idea or the concept that the Knights of Labor really sort of like sold, which was that things go best when workers and owners realize that they need to cooperate and they need each other. Okay, that's it for right now. Pick this up tomorrow. Peace and love.